Image prompt. Highly detailed dramatic scene of a white police officer towering over a frightened but defiant black single mother in her late 20s, with deep brown eyes full of fire, wearing a worn hoodie and jeans, standing protectively beside her muscular pit bull with alert amber eyes and battle scars, both bathed in harsh flashing red and blue police lights at night on a rain-slick urban street with brick buildings and graffiti. The officer's face twisted with arrogance, the dog's stance tense and ready to defend. Intense atmosphere of injustice and courage, cinematic lighting, realistic textures, hyper-realistic emotional expressions. White police officer bullies a black single mother, her war dog, turned the tables in an instant. The first thing Layla heard wasn't the siren. It was the slow, deliberate click of a boot on wet pavement, the kind of sound that made the night itself tense up. The street was empty except for her. Her 6-year-old son sleeping in the back seat of their beat-up Honda Civic, and the broad-shouldered officer stepping out of his cruiser like he owned the whole block. The flashing lights painted his pale face in streaks of red and blue, but the sneer he wore needed no illumination. "License and registration," he said, voice flat. Layla handed them over, careful to keep her hands visible. She'd been taught that since she was 12. Move slow. Speak calm. Don't give them a reason. But something in his eyes told her he didn't need a reason. "You know why I stopped you?" he asked. "No, sir." Her voice was steady, but her knuckles clenched on the steering wheel. "You were driving too slow. Suspicious behavior. Mind if I check your trunk?" Layla knew she could say no. She also knew what saying no would mean. The memory of her cousin Marcus, face down on the pavement for resisting, burned hot in her mind. From the passenger's side, a low rumble cut through the cold air. Titan, her pit bull, sat upright, eyes locked on the officer. His ears twitched, his muscles coiled like springs. The officer's gaze flicked to Titan, and his mouth twisted into something between a smirk and a snarl. "That mutt better be on a leash." "He's trained," Layla said. "Yeah? We'll see about that." The tension wasn't just in the air, it was crawling under her skin, threading itself into her breath. She thought of the rent she was behind on, the job interview she had tomorrow, the little boy in the back seat who believed she could keep him safe. The officer's hand dropped to his holster. Not a gun yet, but the motion was enough to make Titan's growl deepen, vibrating through the metal frame of the car. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer ordered. Layla's pulse thudded in her ears. She opened the door, keeping her palms open and high. The night smelled of wet asphalt and ozone, the city's heart beating somewhere far away, oblivious. Titan followed, padding silently, every muscle tuned to her. The officer circled the car, running his flashlight along the windows, into the shadows. "Single mother?" he asked suddenly, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. "Yes," she said, chin high. "Tough life. Must be hard. Keeping your nose clean without a man around." It wasn't just an insult, it was an accusation. Something hot surged through Layla's chest. She swallowed it down, but Titan's hackles rose, his body inching between her and the officer. "You need to keep your dog under control," the officer said, stepping closer, his flashlight beam cutting across her face. "And you need to keep your hands to yourself." She shot back before she could stop herself. The smile that spread across his face wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile predators wore before the strike. The next few seconds would decide everything: her freedom, her safety, her son's future. And Titan knew it. The officer's shadow loomed over her, stretching long in the wet streetlight, a silhouette of authority gone rotten. "You got attitude, huh?" he said, stepping in so close she could smell the bitter tang of stale coffee on his breath. "No, officer," Layla replied, steady but low. She could feel Titan's shoulder pressed lightly against her thigh, solid, ready, waiting. "Then prove it," he said, hands on the hood. She hesitated. She knew the rule: comply, survive. But compliance wasn't a guarantee, not here, not tonight. Her son was only a few feet away, his face soft in sleep under the dim dome light. She didn't want his dreams poisoned by the sight of his mother pressed against cold metal. The officer's hand twitched toward her shoulder. Titan moved before she could think, stepping forward, teeth barely showing. The growl now a living thing in the air between them. "You need to put that dog down before," the officer started, but the threat never finished. A car rolled slowly past at the end of the block, music low, headlights cutting through the mist. The driver glanced at the scene, hesitated. Layla saw the pause, the flash of curiosity, the decision to keep driving. The city was full of people who didn't want trouble. The officer's eyes narrowed. You see that? Nobody's going to help you out here. She knew he was right. He stepped back, circling to the rear of her car. Pop the trunk. There's nothing in there, Layla said. Pop it, he repeated. Her stomach twisted. She had nothing illegal, but she'd seen enough to know searches could be productive when an officer decided they should be. She reached into the car to pull the lever. The trunk creaked open. He rifled through it, tossing aside a grocery bag, a spare tire, a blanket. His flashlight beam bounced off the wet pavement. What's this? He asked, pulling out a metal pipe from under the blanket. That's my car jack handle, she said quickly. It came with the, looks like a weapon to me. He interrupted, holding it up like Exhibit A in a courtroom only he could see. Layla's chest tightened. She could already imagine the report. Black female suspect in possession of a blunt weapon. It would spiral from there resisting arrest, endangering an officer, maybe worse. Titan's growl returned, lower this time, vibrating through her bones. The officer glanced at the dog. Get him back, or I swear what? You'll shoot him. Layla's voice cracked sharp as glass. Because that's what this is about, isn't it? A reason. He stepped toward her, the pipe still in his hand. His eyes weren't on the dog anymore, they were locked on her. For a split second, Layla thought about running. Not far, not away just enough to put herself between him and the car door where her son slept. But running was the language they wanted you to speak so they could answer in bullets. Instead, she stood her ground. You think you're brave? He asked, tilting his head. You think that dog's gonna save you? Titan's muscles quivered. Layla could feel his breath against her leg, hot and fast. That dog, she said, her voice steady now, is smarter than you'll ever be. The officer's jaw worked. He glanced at Titan again, and this time, something shifted in his expression calculation. He knew the dog was trained, controlled. That meant he could try to break the control. He lunged not at her, but toward Titan. His boot came up, fast, aimed at the dog's ribs. Titan exploded into motion. The chain leash snapped taut, his front paws slamming down in a defensive stance, a bark ripping through the air like a gunshot. It wasn't the frantic bark of fear, it was a warning, deep and certain, the kind that stops the world for half a heartbeat. The officer froze mid-step. His boot hovered for an instant before he set it down slowly. He wasn't expecting the discipline, the precision. Layla stepped forward, putting herself between them, palm out. That's enough, she said, not to Titan, but to the man who still had his hand on the metal pipe. For a moment, no one moved. The rain pattered against the hood, ticking like a clock winding down to something inevitable. Then, from down the street, voices. A group of 3 teenagers with hoodies pulled low, walking toward the corner store. They slowed as they saw the flashing lights, their eyes darting from Layla to the officer to the dog. The officer noticed them, too. His posture shifted, still tense, but less certain. The presence of witnesses wasn't a shield, but it was an inconvenience. You're lucky tonight, he said finally, tossing the pipe back into her trunk. But watch yourself. People like you always slip up. He walked back to his cruiser, his boots splashing through puddles, every step carrying the weight of a threat not yet spent. Layla didn't move until the car rolled away, the lights fading into the wet dark. Only then did she kneel beside Titan, her fingers curling into the warm fur at his neck. Good boy, she whispered, though her voice trembled. From the back seat, a small voice. Mommy? She turned. Her son was sitting up, rubbing his eyes. What happened? Nothing, baby, she said softly. We're going home. But in her chest, the truth burned. It wasn't nothing. And it's not over. The next morning, the city was gray and tired. Layla walked Titan down the block, coffee in hand, her son still asleep upstairs. The night before played over in her mind, every look, every word. She'd been here before, in different ways, grocery store clerks trailing her down aisles, neighbors locking their car doors when she walked past. But last night was different. Last night, she'd almost lost more than her pride. At the corner, she ran into Mrs. Henderson, her elderly neighbor with a floral scarf and eyes that saw more than she let on. Heard some noise last night, Mrs. Henderson said. Saw those lights. You all right? Layla hesitated. She wanted to say yes, to keep it light. But the lie felt too heavy this morning. Cops pulled me over, she said. Mrs. Henderson's jaw tightened. You be careful. They see a woman like you. They think they can. She shook her head. Just be careful. Careful. It was the word she'd been hearing since she was a teenager. Careful meant quiet. Careful meant small. Careful meant surviving, but never living. She looked down at Titan, who stared back with that calm, unblinking gaze. He wasn't careful, was ready. That night, she made a decision. The decision started with her phone. She called Marcus, the cousin who'd been stopped 3 times last year, the one who carried a GoPro in his dashboard now. He picked up on the second ring. You okay? He asked. Not really, she said. I need your help. Within an hour, Marcus was at her kitchen table, Titan sitting at his feet like an honorary guard. Layla told him every word the officer had said, every move he'd made. Marcus listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening. We can file a complaint, he said. You think that's going to do anything? Layla asked. I've seen those complaints disappear into a black hole. Marcus leaned forward. Then we don't just file it. We make it public. The idea made her chest tighten. Going public meant exposure, attention, risk. It also meant taking the story out of the shadows. They set to work. Marcus pulled up street camera maps, trying to see if any footage existed. Layla drafted her account, word by word, careful but unflinching. She included the details. People would try to erase the sneer in the officer's voice, the way his hand hovered over his weapon, the moment Titan's growl cut through the night. By midnight, it was online. By morning, it had 1,000 shares. By the end of the week, 10,000. Not all the comments were supportive. Some accused her of lying, of provoking the officer, of playing the race card. Others called Titan dangerous, a menace. But there were voices, too, that echoed her truth. People told their own stories, each one a different shape of the same wound. And then, one afternoon, the message came. It was from a woman named Carla, a former officer from another state. She wrote, I know the man who stopped you. He's done this before. He'll keep doing it unless someone stops him. I can help you get proof. Layla stared at the message on her phone for a long time. Carla's words felt heavy, not because they were shocking, but because they rang with the metallic clang of truth. She'd met enough Officer Bradleys in her life to know they didn't act alone. They thrived in a culture that fed them cover and applause. But hearing that this man had a record, that there were others who'd been in her place, made the fire in her chest burn hotter. She replied before she could talk herself out of it. Tell me what you know. Carla didn't waste time. Within minutes, a phone call lit up Layla's screen. The woman's voice was low, firm, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who'd seen too much and learned not to flinch. I worked with him in the academy, Carla said. His name's Officer Dean Bradley. He was trouble from the start, short fuse, chip on his shoulder, and a mouth full of the kind of jokes that aren't jokes at all. Complaints followed him like a shadow. Every time, the department swept them under the rug. Said he was misunderstood. Layla's hand curled into a fist around the phone. And now, Carla said, he's the golden boy of his precinct. Gets overtime, gets praise. And every so often, someone like you ends up on his radar. I've seen him push people until they break, just so he can write them up. Layla's mind replayed the way Bradley's eyes had locked on her, not with curiosity, but with a hunter's patience. Carla went on. I left the force after he and a few others tried to pin a resisting charge on a teenager who did nothing but run when he got scared. Kid spent a night in jail. His mom never got an apology. So why are you telling me this now? Layla asked. Because, Carla said, I saw your post. I saw your dog. And I think you're the first person who might actually stand up to him and not fold. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of Titan shifting on the floor, his nails tapping against the wood. What kind of proof are we talking about? Layla asked finally. Carla's voice sharpened. Body cam footage. His. From the night he stopped you. Layla's breath caught. I thought they kept that locked down. They do, Carla said. But I know someone in records. Someone who's not afraid to bend a rule or two for the right reason. It was risky, dangerous, even. But Layla knew in her gut that this was more than a personal grudge now. It was about all the people who didn't have Titan in the car with them. When? She asked. They met 2 nights later in a diner on the south side of town, the kind of place where the coffee was always burnt and the air smelled faintly of fried onions no matter the hour. Carla slid into the booth across from Layla, her blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail, eyes sharp and scanning the room before settling on her. She wore a worn leather jacket, the kind that had seen more than one scuffle. "You bring him?" Carla asked, glancing toward the door. Layla tilted her head toward the window. Outside, in the glow of the street lamp, Titan sat in the driver's seat of her car, watching the diner through the glass. Carla allowed herself a small smirk. "Smart dog." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a flash drive, setting it on the table between them. "This is it. The footage from the stop. Unedited." Layla stared at it. The thing was so small, so ordinary, it was hard to believe it could carry something so dangerous. "Once this is out," Carla said, "he'll come after you. Maybe not with a badge, at least not at first. But he'll try to scare you. He'll try to make you regret it." Layla met her gaze. "Then he's not going to like what happens next." The next morning, Marcus set up his laptop on Layla's kitchen table. Titan lay stretched out on the rug beside them, head on his paws, but eyes alert, following every movement. Marcus plugged in the flash drive. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The video flickered to life, grainy, shaky footage from Bradley's chest-level view. Layla's own face appeared, illuminated in the harsh glare of the cruiser's lights. She watched herself hand over her license, watched Bradley smirk, heard the casual venom in his voice. Then came the moment with the car jack handle. From this angle, it was painfully clear how deliberate he'd been, how he'd pulled it from under the blanket with theatrical slowness, holding it out like a trophy. And then, the part that made Layla's stomach knot, the lunge toward Titan. The body cam caught the sudden shift, the raised boot, the split-second snarl before Titan planted himself between them. Marcus let out a low whistle. "This is bad for him. Really bad." "Good," Layla said. They cut the video down, keeping the clearest moments, overlaying timestamps and text for context. Marcus uploaded it to 3 different cloud drives, then to the same network of activist pages that had shared her story before. By noon, it was spreading like wildfire. By evening, the local news was calling. The fallout came fast. Bradley was placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation, department speak for "let's hope this blows over." But the public heat was too strong this time. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, holding signs with Titan's face on them. Layla avoided interviews at first, knowing that cameras could twist her words. But one night, as she was walking Titan, a young man approached her, phone in hand. "You're the lady from the video," he said, almost in awe. "My sister saw it. She says it's the first time she's seen someone make them back down." Layla didn't know what to say. She just nodded, tightened her hold on Titan's leash, and kept walking. It might have ended there if Bradley had been the kind of man to walk away. 3 nights later, Layla was locking up her front door when she heard it. The slow roll of tires on gravel, the faint hum of an engine idling. She turned to see a dark SUV parked across the street, no plates visible in the shadows. Titan stiffened, ears forward. The driver's side window rolled down just enough for a voice to carry across the street. "You think you won?" It was Bradley. Layla's stomach went cold, but her stance stayed firm. She didn't answer. "I know where you live," he said. "I know where your kid goes to school. You keep running your mouth, and I'll make sure you regret it." Titan's growl rumbled low, like thunder rolling in from miles away. Bradley smirked in the dark, then rolled the window up and drove off, his taillights disappearing into the night. By the time she got inside, her hands were shaking not from fear, but from rage. She called Marcus, told him everything. "He's trying to intimidate you," Marcus said. "That means he's scared. You've got him cornered." "I don't feel cornered," Layla said. "I feel ready." 2 days later, she met Carlo again, this time in the back room of a community center where a local activist group was planning a rally. Carla spread out a series of printed reports on the table, disciplinary records, old complaints, even a photo of Bradley at a bar with 2 other officers who'd been accused of similar misconduct. "This is bigger than him," Carla said. "It's the system that protects him. We take him down, we send a message." Layla nodded, feeling the weight of it settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just about her anymore. As they talked strategy, Titan sat at her side, calm but alert. Every so often, he'd glance toward the door as if reminding them that danger had a way of showing up uninvited. And when it did, they'd be ready. The night of the rally, the city buzzed like a live wire. Layla stood at the edge of the park, the cool air carrying the scent of damp grass and street food from a vendor on the corner. Titan sat at her side, a black and brown statue of muscle and loyalty, his amber eyes scanning the crowd. Marcus was already at the stage, fiddling with the mic. The activist group had turned out in force handmade signs, drums, chants echoing off the brick walls of nearby buildings. News vans parked along the curb, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. The speeches began as the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting the clouds in streaks of deep orange and purple. Layla listened, her hands deep in Titan's fur, feeling the warmth there anchor her. Every speaker had a story. Every voice was a brick in a wall that said, enough. When it was her turn, she stepped up to the mic. The crowd quieted, and for a moment, all she could hear was her own breathing. My name is Layla James, she began. I'm a mother. I'm a neighbor. I'm someone who's been told to be careful her whole life. And last month, a man with a badge decided I was suspicious enough to threaten, to try to intimidate, to make me feel small. She paused, letting the weight of the silence settle. But I wasn't alone. My son was in the car, and so was my dog, Titan. That night, Titan stood between me and a man who wanted me to be afraid. And I realized something: fear only works if we let it. Applause swelled. Cameras clicked. Layla stepped down, her pulse still humming. She didn't see him at first. It was Marcus who spotted him. Layla, he said under his breath. 3 o'clock. She followed his gaze, and there he was. Bradley. No uniform this time, just a dark hoodie and jeans, his baseball cap pulled low. He stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes locked on her. He didn't clap. He didn't move. He just waited. The rally wound down as night took hold, streetlights blinking awake one by one. People filtered out in groups, their voices still loud, still defiant. Layla stayed close to Marcus and Carla, Titan pacing beside her. When they reached her car, she felt Ida's presence behind her. The hairs on her neck stood up before she even turned. Bradley stepped out from between 2 parked cars, blocking her path. Nice speech, he said, his voice almost casual. But here's the thing: words don't change the world. Action does. Titan's growl cut through the space between them. Bradley's hands were in his hoodie pocket. That made Layla's chest tighten. She didn't know what was in there, but she knew his kind. They like to keep you guessing. You should go home, officer, she said. He chuckled. Not an officer tonight. Just a man having a conversation. He took a step closer. You embarrassed me. Made me look weak. That's not something I let slide. Marcus moved forward, but Bradley shifted his stance, squaring his shoulders. Careful, he warned. Wouldn't want your cousin here to end up in the hospital. That was the moment the temperature in Layla's blood spiked. Bradley had crossed every line there was to cross. Titan, she said, her voice low. The pit bull's stance changed instantly. No lunging, no barking, just a slow, deliberate step forward, his eyes locked on Bradley, every muscle primed. Bradley laughed under his breath. You think your mutt scares me? Then his right hand came out of the hoodie, and in it was a small black canister. Pepper spray. He aimed it at Titan. Let's see how tough he is. Layla's shout came the same instant Bradley pressed the nozzle, but Titan was already in motion. He surged forward with explosive speed, closing the gap before the spray could hit. His jaws clamped down not on Bradley's arm, but on the wrist holding the canister. The man's shout of pain ripped through the night. The spray went wide, misting harmlessly into the air as Titan twisted, forcing Bradley off balance. The canister clattered to the pavement. Bradley yanked free, clutching his wrist, his face twisted in rage. He reached for his pocket again, but by then Marcus had stepped in, shoving him back hard. Cops are on their way. Carla's voice cut in from behind them. She'd already called 911, her phone still in her hand. And this time, they're not going to protect you. Bradley's eyes darted between them, calculating. Titan stood his ground, chest heaving, teeth bared just enough to send a message. Sirens wailed in the distance. Bradley took a step back. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, it is, Layla said, her voice steady. Because you just showed everyone who you really are. 2 patrol cars screeched to a stop at the curb. Officers spilled out, hands on their belts, eyes scanning the scene. Bradley tried to speak first, but Carla cut him off, pointing at the security camera mounted above the street lamp. Check the footage, she said. It's all there. The next week was a blur: statements, meetings with lawyers, interviews with reporters who, for once, seemed more interested in the truth than the spin. The footage from the rally's security camera went public within days. It showed everything: Bradley approaching, The pepper spray, Titan's calculated, controlled takedown. Public opinion sealed the rest. Bradley was fired from the force. Charges for assault and attempted animal cruelty followed. But for Layla, the real victory wasn't his downfall, it was what came after. At the next rally, she wasn't just a speaker. She was a leader. People she'd never met came to thank her, to tell her they'd been afraid once too, and that seeing her stand her ground had changed something in them. And through it all, Titan was there, quiet, watchful, unshaken. Kids from the neighborhood brought him treats. Someone painted his face on a mural downtown, his amber eyes bright against a backdrop of bold, defiant colors. One evening, weeks later, Layla sat on the front steps with her son, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. Titan lay at their feet, his head resting on her knee. "Mom," her son asked, "was Titan scared that night?" She smiled faintly, running her fingers through the dog's fur. "I think he knew what had to be done," she said. And he wasn't about to let fear decide for him. Her son thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "Like you." Layla looked out at the street, at the neighbors chatting, at the murals, at the city still humming with its mix of danger and hope. She knew the fight wasn't over, not for her, not for anyone like her. But she also knew something else now. Courage could be trained. Loyalty could be earned. And sometimes, the fiercest warriors walked on four legs. Titan lifted his head, ears twitching toward the sound of footsteps down the block. Layla followed his gaze, but it was only Marcus coming over, waving from the sidewalk. She smiled. They were ready for whatever came next. And if trouble ever came again, it would find them waiting. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.